Jess here from the Storage Business Owners Alliance on another episode and edition of Engaging with the Experts. Today, my self-storage industry expert is Maurice Pogoda from Pogoda Companies. Thanks for joining us, Maurice.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here with you and hopefully answer any questions you may have.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we have tons of questions for you, but before I get into those questions, we're just going to go into some background information so the audience kind of gets to know you and your company a little bit better. You founded the Pogoda Companies in 1987.
Correct.
Awesome. You guys have been featured on the top operators list with Inside Self Storage for about the past 15 years due to your growth and development. You're currently operating about 3,750,000 square feet of self-storage.
Yeah, across Michigan and Ohio. Yeah.
Awesome. And then give me some background of some of the other things you guys are doing over there at Pogoda.
Well, we're really exclusively focused on self-storage. We're the two areas that are our primary focus right now. We're in a very aggressive growth mode. We've probably, I don't know the exact number, but we've probably added 20 properties or so in the last 2 years. We just recently closed on 5 in the last few months. We're also adding third-party management. So we're up to, as you said, 58. Well, you said the square footage, but we have 58 properties spread across Michigan and Ohio. And we're looking to take that platform and grow it really across the Midwest, and where appropriate, grow it elsewhere.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So take me back to 1987. What made you get this crazy idea that you wanted to go into self-storage?
I've got to take you back a little further.
Oh, well, let's go.
So I graduated from University of Michigan with an MBA. I'm originally a New Yorker. I grew up in Brooklyn, but I married a Michigan girl, and lo and behold, I ended up in Michigan, which was really, in both cases, the best thing I've ever done. And I was working as an income property broker for a prominent brokerage outfit that sold apartments, shopping centers, office, the industrial, the usual run-of-the-mill things that most people do. And I sort of got the feeling that I was really cut out to be on my own. And so I started exploring to see something that I wouldn't compete with others, where I wasn't going to be the small fish in the big pond. And really self-storage at that point was really very, very small. I don't, the industry now says we've got 60,000, maybe we've got 50,000. Who knows how many real self-storage facilities we have? But at that time, it was probably 10 or 15,000 across the country.
Wow. So
it was very small. It was, if you're talking classic life cycle, it was probably more in the adolescent phase, whereas right now, we're probably more in the middle age of the life cycle of a product type. And I just saw, frankly, my major with my MBA was marketing. I've always been a marketing oriented person. And one of the keys in marketing is to find your niche. And I saw that really there was no one else that knew very much about self-storage. People would say, "What do you do?" I'd say, you know those rows of doors you see in some places? I said, that's what I do. They would say, well, why do you do that? But it was an opportunity, and I started off as a broker. And what was nice is there was pent up demand because no one else, Marcus and Millichap really didn't exist at that point, and CBRE and all the other guys now that basically dominate. Mm-hmm. They hadn't discovered, they might have existed, but they sure didn't do self-storage at that point. So sure. I had the quick opportunity to dominate one market, which was Michigan, and sell a whole bunch of storage facilities. So that's kind of how I started, and I kind of dabbled in a few other things over the years, manufactured housing, some multifamily, but I've always been pretty dogmatic of sticking with self-storage and really got away from all those other things.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been asked the same thing. They go, "You're in self-storage. So what are you guys, like storage wars?" No, we're not storage wars. And a lot of people say to me too, like, "Isn't that boring?" And I'm like, "No, it's actually a pretty exciting industry, and I'm pretty fortunate to be in it."
It's funny you say that, because what really got me was, and so I started in '87. And I started with my wife. She's a speech pathologist. She quit. And we kind of did this together. We started and we said, okay, we're going to do it. And my oldest son, Adam, who's in the business now, at that point was 6 months old. So it was definitely an interesting period. But my first convention was the year before, in 1986. I think it was in Vegas, but at the time it was the Self-Service Storage Association. So the SSSA rather than SSA. And I just remember at one point being in an elevator, I had my name tag on, and some other people, they were probably from Texas. They looked at me and they said, "What do you guys do? What? You're here for what? What? How could there be a convention for that?"
And now they're the largest state association with a large convention, right? The ones in Texas.
But it was just funny because that was the reaction from people. But obviously, the industry's very much changed since then.
Yeah, the industry is booming. Lots of exciting things happening in 2021, especially after a rough year in 2020 with COVID. So again, I think we're in a fortunate position being in this great industry. Going back into the early part of your career, what are some of like the biggest surprises or least, anticipated occurrences that happened to you that were kind of like alarming or good, bad, or indifferent? Name some of those for me.
I think the thing that every time it happened in one form or another was always very alarming were the various recessions over the years. I mean, we all think back on 2008, and we think back now, and we're still in the middle of it, but the pandemic last year, and each time you're in the middle of it, you think, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And, for me, starting in '87, in 1990, there was the savings and loan crisis. And a lot of people may not remember it, but banks stopped financing. Everything stopped at that point. So here I was a broker, and I couldn't sell anything because no one could get financing. So what the interesting thing is, what's the phrase that when one door closes, another door opens kind of thing?
Oh, yeah.
So I started getting phone calls because properties, storage facilities were getting foreclosed on. And since I was the only game in town, they thought that I, knew everything. And they said, well, do you guys manage these things? Because the banks wanted someone to manage them. And, at that point, I'd never managed the storage in my life. But, my answer was, of course we do. So
that's awesome.
It was great, but you learn very quickly. And, the good thing about those bad situations is that one thing led to another. And so I started managing, and then there were buying opportunities. So I was able in the early 90s to buy my first facilities from a bank at the time pretty good price. Of course, now we look at those prices and we think, oh my God, if I wish I would have bought the entire country at those prices.
I'm sure.
So that was one of the interesting things, the various recessions. The other really was how self-storage has so changed, and really in the mid 90s when Wall Street started recognizing self-storage and the REITs came into existence, suddenly self-storage wasn't the low man on the totem pole. Mm-hmm. It was starting to move up the food chain. So those I think were the major things. And I'd say right now the interesting thing right now is how well we're doing and how every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to get into the business. You know,
They do.
the glut of money that is entering the business or wants to be in the business is, you know, to use the word, is unprecedented. And so it's very interesting to see that. But I will tell you that when you go through a few of these cycles, you find that when we have the inevitable downturn, whenever that is, I don't know when it is, whether it's this year, next year, in 2 years, but it's funny how, like mice, a lot of that scatters to the wind. You know, there a lot of that, because one, they'll have a hard time aggregating the number of properties that they want to. So they can't deploy the amount of money they want to. They get a little frustrated. They may not have the patience. So a lot of them, like mice, they start to scatter to the wind when things don't go their way. But that right now, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I just came back from ISS, the show that was in Vegas at the beginning of July. Lots of new faces and new blood in the industry. See people popping up all the time on LinkedIn and Facebook forums that I follow, that they're looking to invest, looking to get in, buying my first facility, building my first facility. So we see a lot of that. And that's going to kind of lead into my next question. You've been in this game now for many, many years. What are like the top 3 tips that come to your mind that you would give someone that's brand new into this industry to be successful, build a portfolio, run operations, all of that?
You know, I really have some very standard things I say to people, because I get phone calls. I do see on Facebook or on LinkedIn, you know, people asking questions. Honestly, the first thing that I say to them is slow down. I really say that if you're going to get into an industry and you're going to invest anywhere from a few hundred thousands to many, many millions of dollars, you should really know what you're talking about. And I suggest to them that they join their state association. I suggest that they join the SSA. I suggest that they go to the ISS and SSA conventions. And I mention to people that we're in a very friendly industry. We're in an industry that, in general, people are very happy to share their knowledge, which is not necessarily the case in a lot of other industries.
No,
you know,
I agree.
People will give it away for free and take advantage of it. And the thing that's the most frustrating, and in years past, one of the other things that we used to do a lot of was a lot of consulting. Don't do a lot of it now, but we used to do feasibility studies and all of that. And the most frustrating thing is when somebody would pay you to do a feasibility study, and a lot of them would come back with a go recommendation, and some would come back a no-go recommendation. That I mean, that's why you hired somebody to do a feasibility study. And then the person would say, well, you know, I still think it's a good location, and I'm going to go ahead anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure that happens a lot out there.
But so that's the first thing that I say to them. And I mentioned that they should really understand their market. I know it's a platitude. It's what you would expect people would do. But a lot of people don't understand that they have to really understand where they fit into a market. They need to understand whether there are any other new storage facilities planned. They need to understand the ease of entry to get into a market. So that's all. They just need to understand the demand within that market. And just because you hear 5, 6, 7 square feet per person, you know, some markets have 19 feet, some markets have 3 feet, and they're saturated. So you can't necessarily just say these are metrics and this is what you follow. You have to really do your homework. And then the last thing is, if you're going to get into the business, you know, go to these shows, talk to all the vendors, understand the products out there, understand what you need to run a successful storage property. And, back in the day, people did it by hand. And of course, which was always, they were the best properties to take over because you just smelled opportunity.
I'm sure.
They were unsophisticated. You said, okay, we can do better here.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
there's a lot of different things out there. Do you want to go automated? Do you want to have a phone app? Do you want to have door alarms? Do you want, all the various possibilities? You have to decide what you want. So those are the things that I really tell people.
Yeah, and we'll get into talking later in this discussion a little bit about kind of like some of the tools that you feel they need in their toolbox from a vendor perspective to help make them successful. But yeah, I will just echo you there. It's critical to be involved with the SSA and ISS, go to the shows, get to know those people, network. And Maurice, you're right. This industry is so friendly. People give away the information because I think in the back of our minds, we all know that there's plenty of wealth out there to go around to all of us and plenty of opportunities because there just are at this point. So kind of walk me through when you started, how you grew to where you are now, and kind of what your next phase of growth strategy is for Pogoda.
Well, as I mentioned, started off as a single broker with my wife's support. And, over time, got involved in management, and it's always fascinating to see, okay, then you start adding people, and when you find you can't do it yourself. So started hiring area managers as the number of properties grew. But then there were those buying opportunities. And, it's a little scary at first to do it on your own, but having actual property management experience makes the buying process that much better because you actually know what you're looking at, versus some people that are just buying based strictly on numbers. But then in the mid 1990s, I started building storage facilities as I got to know the markets better, found some locations that seemed appropriate, and that was fun. It was challenging. It's a little bit different to buy existing versus building new and having to wait to fill up, and it could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, and that really continued on really up until the late 90s and early 2000s, and at that point I had my first liquidity event. I decided to sell some properties. Sold them to Storage USA at the time, that eventually became Extra Space, and that was a way to take advantage of what at that time were the high prices, and also fund future acquisitions and future development. So went through that whole process and really just kept doing that for a whole bunch of years. Really just frankly, right up until I have three grown sons at this point, and as you and I were discussing prior to our starting here, two of the three are in the business with me now, and they've come in the last 3-4 years. The third is joining sometime this fall, and so it's. The interesting thing is that all three of them came from very substantial backgrounds before joining, which was always my personal goal, never to have family come into the business just because they were family, but they've come into the business because one, they wanted to, but the two that are in the business now have very substantial real estate backgrounds with major companies in New York. And then they came back to beautiful Michigan, which right now it's gorgeous outside. It's about 80 degrees and, as nice as you could ever expect. But that's a little commercial for Michigan. But
Move to Michigan.
Move to Michigan. And the third son, MBA in finance, worked with major companies, and He's coming in because we're really in growth mode at this point. So the years were a lot slower before they joined, in the sense that because I've been in the business for the length of time that I've been in the business, stuff would just come to me. People would call, opportunities would come about, and I was able to just sit back and wait. I've got a good organization that runs the properties on a day-to-day basis. So frankly, I didn't need to be involved in that. But when they've joined, we're actively looking to expand and looking for the kind of properties that we think are our sweet spot. So that's kind of taken us up until today. And we've added, I think I said something like 20 properties in the last 2 years, which
a lot.
Which it may not be public storage growth, but for a small company, even though we're in the top 20, this is a fragmented industry. So you could be in the top 20 with it's rounded 60 properties, and still be a very small operator, even though you're relatively medium-sized in this industry.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love hearing that your children are involved, excited that your one son is going to join you guys in the next couple months. And you see that a lot in this industry. I mean, I know two that come to mind are Liberty Property, the Mickelsons, and then the Lindsay Self-Storage Group. You've got John and his brother, and that came from the dad and learning the industry from their family. I know there's even someone like the vendor side on the move that was CJ Stratt's grandfather that started and kind of passed the legacy down into his family. So you see that a lot in the industry, which I love.
And by the way, on the move, if I'm correct, and I think I am, it was really started here in Michigan. They had a couple of properties, and I knew them very, very well. So it's a lot of what's so nice is that this industry is a big industry, but it's a small industry. You can. It is. People say to me all the time, "Do you know so and so?" I say, "Well, I don't know them well, but I definitely know them."
Sure.
And that's the kind of industry we have here.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that completely. So you were just talking about your growth and the sweet spot for you guys. What are some of those key attributes that you look for? I mean, you've pretty much been in Michigan. You've got some in Ohio. I know we discussed you're looking at some other markets. What are those key attributes that you look for when you're going into a new market?
Frankly, we're looking. It may sound trite, but we're looking for opportunity. We're looking for we're looking for properties where, through our management, through our construction team, through our knowledge of the industry, that we can improve. So we're looking for, frankly, mom and pops that we can buy up. I mean, we have bought some C of O deals. So we have bought some Class A new properties that are not stabilized yet. But in general, our sweet spot is to find properties in the 50,000 square foot range or so, where there's some room for expansion. Some of them are older properties, and our mode is to go in. I mean, we recently had a property that we bought in April, and right now they're in the middle of replacing all the doors. We replaced the roof. We repaved it. New gate systems, new office, new everything. So essentially, it's brand new, even though it might be a 1993 product. So we'll go in, we'll do that, and then at that point, we'll look at some of the basics. We look at the rental rate structure, existing tenants. We look at our competitors, and we care about our competitors, but in general, we usually strive to be the price leaders in our markets. So we can sometimes be 20, 30% higher than our competitors. And even though right now in the industry, you can't do any wrong and everybody's 95%, that's not the way the normal world has worked. And it won't always work that way in the future.
Sure.
And we're comfortable being 88% and making a ton more money than the guy down the street at 95%. So we're looking for those, of course we're always looking for the right location. We're looking for visibility, and we're also looking to continue to scale up in markets that we're in, or go into new markets where we feel there's the right opportunity for growth.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I love the example that you gave of going in and cleaning up the property. That is critical. Keeping your property and, protect your asset, repave, redo the doors, make it clean, have all that stuff that you do. Because obviously curb appeal is a big factor in the decision-making process for tenants in some scenarios. I know for me, I don't want to be driving my car through an alleyway that is all filled with like potholes and stuff and wrecking my car in the process. So thank you for those tips. Those are awesome.
It's really a philosophy.
Sure.
And we're happy to buy the properties where the owner's philosophy is one of neglect, because though they may feel that they had maximized their opportunity and their revenue, we know that by keeping things and improving things, by keeping things the way they should be, improving them, we know that people will pay for that. That has been our experience. And look, different operators have different philosophies, but that's our philosophy.
Yeah, and I shared this in another edition that we did with someone else the other day. I came from a food franchising background. I was a business consultant, so I was always going into locations, and I could literally walk through even before I got through the front door, and I was able to tell if the owner had a presence within that location or not. And same thing goes for self-storage. When somebody drives up to the facility, I'm pretty sure that they would be able to detect on how engaged that property is, and making sure it's safe for their tenants and everything is copacetic. So it definitely is a philosophy, but that's a good one for you guys to go out there and gobble up the market of those opportunities and turn them into profit centers for you.
Yeah, they're not real easy to find.
Sure.
It's never been easy, but it's surely not easy now, because there are operators out there that are just scarfing up everything they possibly can.
They are.
And their philosophy is a bit different, where they just don't do any capital improvements at all, and just looking to gain scale and hoping to sell it off as a big portfolio. And that works for some people. That's just not us.
Yeah, no, if I were owning properties right now, I would definitely have all of that built in every year to make sure that I'm always making improvements to my property for sure. Let's talk about, we said this earlier when we were talking, tell me, everybody's kind of got their toolbox that they've developed throughout the years, tools that work for them, whether it is old school pen and paper, which a lot of technology is pushing us out of that mentality. What are you guys using? Revenue management systems, property management systems? Give me those tools that you feel, and it doesn't even have to be software related, but tools that help your locations operate efficiently.
Well, I think there are the two biggest tools, and the first one is a plaque, and I don't remember where it came from, but one of our regional managers always had it sitting on his desk, and it said, "It's the manager, stupid." And that's your biggest tool. Having a great manager, a well-trained manager, having your systems in place of how you're operating your property, that takes precedence over everything. And I think that's one of the areas where we happen to excel. That's one of the areas where, like the property being physically in good shape, you walk into one of our offices, the manager makes the difference. And we happen to be believers still in the great value of having a manager. And there are those remote offices where we do have the kiosks, but they're always connected up to humans. They're always close by. They're always ancillary to another property. But the other has to be your website. That's your tool, and that it has to work. It has to do all the things that you need to do on the web. It has to have the right presence. You have to have your SEO set up properly. You have got to have a website that is friendly. We've been working on it for a while, but the pandemic forced us to go to the rent online model, and frankly, it's the best thing we've ever done. Something like 25 or 30% of our rentals now are coming from people renting online versus having to come to the office. It's touchless, it's safer, it saves the manager's time. So those are the two simplest things, and then everything else flows from there.
Sure.
From your gate system to your software, and everybody's got a different vendor that they happen to like. And we've switched over the years. We've switched software products from back in the early days to where we are now. But it's really what you like in that product and how it works for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And when I was at the National SSA show in Nashville, the CEO of Extra Space, Joe, spoke, and he had a piece within his presentation where he was talking about the online customer, and they are starting to surpass people coming in the front door. So they are a critical piece. Website would have to be running very smoothly and be user-friendly to make sure everyone on the user end is having a good experience. So thank you for sharing those tools with us. It's appreciated.
I mean, that's the world we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us, at least I don't think so. I don't think any of us would go to a restaurant these days before you go. You make sure that it's open. In our case, we prefer at this point outdoor seating. You give a phone call over there, but you'll look at those reviews. Oh
yeah.
And that's very, very important in our business. We look at them regularly. We make sure that the managers are trained very, very well so that they get those 5-star reviews. That's the world we're in, and very few people, especially I don't know what they're called, Gen Xers or millennials. I don't know what the right term is.
Millennials, yeah.
But everybody wants to do things essentially without talking to someone else. It's very different, frankly, than what I was used to. But I'm the exact same way now. I'm not even sure that I love the idea of in the hotel industry that I can check in and pick my room in certain platforms without really ever speaking to somebody. I know where I like to be. I know I don't want to be next to the elevator, and I know where I like to be in a hotel, and I know what kind of room I like. So if I can pick it myself, that's fantastic. Same thing in our industry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's funny, we just started this series, so we've only done one other interview, and you and the other person, which was Rahim Amir from Devon Self Storage, you're both number one answers for the biggest part of the toolbox was the managers. And it is the front line of defense. They're the ones that are there every day, interacting with the customers, making sure the property is up and running smoothly and that everything's working and looks good. So that's as this series continues, I'm going to have to start polling some of these to see kind of how all this ranks between the answers that we get out there.
Well, you know what? Just to put a coda on that, you know, before, you know, when the internet started becoming so relevant, you know, we thought, okay, it doesn't matter now where we're located because people are just going to go online, and we can go back to the early days when storage facilities were in the back of industrial parks. You know, versus what the mantra was is that we wanted retail locations. We want to be at Main and Main. We want high visibility. And when all's said and done, that still is the most important. Even with the internet and all of that, the location and the manager are still the most important. A great manager can make a bad location a pretty good location. And a bad manager can take a Class A facility and location and make it a C and drive your business into the ground. So it is the manager, but you can't discount those other aspects. And yes, the web is important, but those other things, having good product, good location, those are your basics. You got to have them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Maurice, I could sit here talking to you for hours. So for sake of time, I'm going to toss out one final question for you. And I think this one's important. And I'm pretty sure that your team has done a good job over the course of your company history doing this. What's your suggestion for an owner or operator to really differentiate themselves in a market, especially if they're up against, you know, the bigger players, the REITs, et cetera? What's that key right there for you to differentiate yourself?
Honestly, probably service.
Yeah.
It's the same theme, but it comes back to training. It comes back to the manager, because you're going to have a hard time competing, frankly, against people like us, against the REITs. You're going to have a hard time spending the money necessary for pay per click and those things that we all spend and what we do. So you're going to have to double down. And for the people trying to compete, being local in your focus, you know, what was old school thinking back in the 90s has come back around again, which is to be involved in the community.
Oh yeah, for sure.
For small towns, supporting that little league team, having your name, Joe's Self Storage, on the back of their uniforms or something like that. But really, the key is to treat the customer the way the proverbial, the way you'd want to be treated. Give them the service. Go out of your way. That's how you're really going to differentiate yourself. And it's going to be hard otherwise, frankly. It's hard to compete when you've got one property in the middle of competitors that have all these other resources that it might have anywhere from 10 to thousands of properties. Really, it's a tough question, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, I've spoken to other groups, and they seem to all echo that. And obviously with the recent spikes in COVID and everything, remain safe. But as much as you can, get together as a community, host events at your location and facility if it's doable. Right now I would lead with some caution there, but when the world opens back up, hopefully soon, to go back to doing that stuff, and you don't have to do live events to stay involved. I mean, we've learned through technology, we can all stay connected through platforms like this, Zoom, et cetera. But I think the grassroots level is going to be critical to some of the smaller ones coming into the space that are on the newer side for sure. So again, I could sit here and talk to you all day. You've been around a long time. You guys are doing great things. You're a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us and share your knowledge with newer owners and operators, and even seasoned owners and operators out in this space. It's much appreciated. Good luck bringing your third son into the business and continuing the growth that you guys are having for your portfolio. It's really exciting to see.
I very much appreciate your having me. I'm happy if anyone wants to reach out.
Absolutely.
We're always happy to be a resource. And this is a great industry that we're all a part of, and the best part is that there's plenty of people that are happy to give back. So thanks again for having me. I very much appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Maurice, we'll be sure to share your contact information with everyone out there if they do want to reach out to you guys to get some advice, talk to your side on the brokerage side, whatever it may be. We'll make sure we get you connected.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day and an awesome weekend. Thanks so much, Maurice.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.